Hello everyone, welcome. I hope you're doing well. Some of you will already know, but for those of you who don't, I've already made a video just like this. I made it last month, and basically the premise is very simple. I follow Goodreads on Twitter/X, and every once in a while they'll post a question prompt for people to answer in their comments. I really enjoy these questions. I like going through the comments. I find recommendations for books there. And so basically what I decided to do for that video was comb through their Twitter/X account and pick out a bunch of questions that they'd asked in the past. And I put them all in this little box, and I answered a few of them at random. I think we got to 6 questions. I gave my answers, a bunch of you gave your answers in the comments of the video, and you seem to enjoy it, so I'm here for part 2. I have removed the questions that we asked last time, and I've kept the ones that we didn't get to. I've also added in a few more questions that Goodreads have posted since that video, so all of these questions are ones we haven't gotten to at this point. If you're interested in checking out that video, checking out what the questions were, what we answered, then I'll leave the link to the video on the screen and in the description. Feel free to check it out. Without any further ado, we'll get to the new ones. The first question is, what's your favorite book cover of all time? I don't think I have an all-time favorite cover. There are a lot of covers that I like. I put in the effort of trying to find covers that I like of books that I want to physically own. This is actually quite funny because in my last video I talked a bit about book covers too and how I think we should appreciate really pretty book covers. I mean, I know we all do, but specifically the term don't judge a book by its cover. I said in the video I totally think we should, because someone has put in a lot of effort to make that book cover really pretty, and a lot of the times I find books because the cover is pretty. So I appreciate a really nice book cover, I do. I just don't think I have an all-time favorite, but I'll show you some of the ones that I really like. You've seen these ones before. The Hobbit, the Silmarillion. I point out these ones in particular because they've been designed by Tolkien himself. These are his drawings that they've put on the covers, which I think is really cool, and they're really nice. So I can highlight these ones. I also really like this one, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. A lot of her covers look this way. It's very simple, but there's something about the universe that's so appealing and so beautiful. It goes all the way around too. I think it's really pretty. This is for sure one of the prettiest paperbacks that I own. There are so many more. I've already shown you some when I was talking about pretty book covers in my last video, and I think I've commented on when I think a book cover is particularly pretty when I show you a book. I'm not sure, I can't remember, but I'm not gonna put up every single book cover that I love because there are quite a few, and I do actually intend on making a video specifically about book covers at some point in the future, so I think I'll save that till then, but you get the point. I have some really nice editions of some really cool books on my shelves, and they're gonna get their entirely own video. So I don't have a favorite. I really like a lot of book covers. I think more often than not, they do a really good job at designing really nice book covers, and I really appreciate that. So thank you to everyone who designs really nice book covers. You're doing a great job. Next question is, what's a book that you can't stop thinking about? Usually when I read a really good book, it stays in my mind for a while. So All the Light We Cannot See has been stuck in my head for a little bit. My favorite books are usually also taking turns up here. So amongst others, The Count of Monte Cristo is constantly taking a turn of occupying my mind. But actually, this is probably not what the question means, but this is what fits the bill best for me. The book that I can't stop thinking about is All Quiet on the Western Front. And I say I don't really know if it counts because I haven't actually read it yet. I picked it up and started reading it last year, and I got like 1 or 2 chapters in before I put it down. And I put it down because I felt like I needed to not be in the middle of any other book. I needed to not have anything to do. I needed just a few days of absolutely nothing on my calendar to just sit down and absorb everything I was reading. This is one of these books that I'm going to highlight and underline to pieces, because those first 2 chapters, I was mind blown. At least in the first few chapters that I got to already, there was a lot of discourse, a lot of discussion. There's so much reflection, and I was a little, not overwhelmed, but like, I felt like I needed to give it all of my attention, and I couldn't just pick it up, read a chapter and put it down. This is one of these books that I need to just dedicate like a full weekend to or something whenever I have the time to do so. It's been on my mind, and I'm just waiting for the perfect time to pick it up and read it. Do you know what I mean? Like, did I make any sense right now? It just hooked me and intrigued me so much when I read that first chapter, or those first 2 chapters. And I just feel like, yeah, I just feel like I need to create a very specific situation in order to absorb it properly and give it the attention it deserves. So yeah, I think this is that book. It hasn't left my mind ever since. And I just either haven't been in the mood or haven't had the time to sit down and just digest it, I think. And until I do, and I'm sure after I have, I'll still be thinking about it. So this one, All Quiet on the Western Front. 2 questions down, and I think I'm doing this at a pretty good pace compared to last time, so we might actually get through a few. Okay, next. Okay, 3 questions attached to each other. Do you reread books? Why or why not? And what's your favorite book to reread? I do reread books. I reread books because I enjoy the story. One of the criteria for keeping a book, to me, because if I don't end up enjoying a book, I get rid of it. It doesn't go back on my shelf. But one of the criteria for deciding whether or not to keep a book on my shelf is, will I potentially in the future want to reread this? And the answer has to be yes, or it doesn't go on my shelf. So in theory, all of the books on my shelves that I have read are also books that I could at some point reread. I don't reread much just because there are still a lot of books on my shelves that I haven't gotten through yet. And so I try to prioritize books that I haven't read yet. But whenever the urge does hit to reread a book, I follow through. I haven't reread many though. Usually I tend to just reread sections in books that I really, really love rather than the whole thing, because there are specific moments or specific characters that I miss the most, or like there's a specific scene that's done so well and I just can't get enough of it. The book that fits this bill the best is a book I've already mentioned, and I'm sure you can guess it if you've seen some of my past videos, Lovely War by Julie Berry. I'm actually planning on rereading this before the end of the year, and if I don't make it before the end of the year, it'll be one of the first books I read in January. It'll be my 3rd reread since November 2021, I think. So obviously that means I've only read it twice at this point, but I love this story so much. It's also one of these books that keeps reappearing in my head every once in a while because I miss the characters. I think the most I've reread a new book is twice. So once I do get to my reread of this, it will be the book that I've reread the most. I think I'll probably get through this once a year as well, just because it's such a great, particularly November read, I think, because I read it for the first time in November. But then the second time I read it in like late winter, very early spring. It feels right to read it then too. So I don't know, this feels like a November to March read to me. Maybe April too. I'll get to it at some point this winter. I'm hoping before the end of 2023, but if not, then like I said, it'll be read in January, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really excited to reread this book. There are very few books that I consider perfect. Very few. But this is one of them. This is one of these books that to me is perfect. And that's the kind of book that I like rereading. The Count of Monte Cristo is another one that I think is perfect and that I will have no qualms with rereading. So the answer is yes, I do reread books. I reread them because I enjoy the story so much, or I miss the characters so much, and I think my favorite book to reread will probably be Lovely War. The Count of Monte Cristo could also fall into this, but it's so big, so it's not a book that I'm going to be rereading often just because it takes me so long to get through, so I get my dose of The Count of Monte Cristo for quite a while once I've read it. This one is not nearly as big, so I can probably reread this one a little more often, and so I'm gonna give this honor to Lovely War. The next question is If you could only read one book for the rest of your life, which book would you choose? Not gonna lie, that kind of sounds like a nightmare. Just a single book? Like, what if you choose a series? Would you be able to take the entire series? I feel like the obvious answer is The Count of Monte Cristo. It's just that this is such a boring answer. This book, for every reason. I mean, not only is it huge, so like if I'm stuck with one book for the rest of my life, it would probably be a really good thing that it's a huge one, so it takes me forever to get through it just once. You could read it really slowly, and by the time you finish it, it would be okay to start it over again because you've taken so long. I also love the Count, so I don't think I could get sick of him. I don't know, it's such a boring answer because by now, at this point, I mean, if you're new to my channel, hi, welcome. This is my favorite book of all time. But if you're not new to my channel, there is no way you don't know at this point that this is my all-time favorite book. So like, you probably expected this, and like, I wanted to give you a cool answer, but like, this is it. Like, forever. You're stuck with one book forever. Wouldn't you also choose your favorite book? Or would you like worry that you get tired of it, and so you wouldn't choose it because you don't want to get tired of your favorite story? But then what would you choose? An alternative would be to choose like a short story collection like this, because then you have a ton of stories that you could jump between. And like, I love Poirot and I love Agatha Christie, so this could be a viable option. There's 50 short stories in here. 50. So like, you take one book, but there's 50 stories. Then I don't know whether this is cheating or not, because you could also take The Lord of the Rings, because although this is a box set of 3 different installments, The Lord of the Rings does also exist as just one book. So like, you could also just... I feel like those are my alternatives. The Count of Monte Cristo short story collection by Agatha Christie, or find a bind-up of The Lord of the Rings. And the only reason I considered those other 2 options is because I don't want to be boring and just say The Count of Monte Cristo, because a bunch of you probably expected that. So, but this is probably my answer. So, I've gotten predictable. How about that? Next question. You know what's funny? I remember filming this last time and getting to like question 3 and thinking, oh my god, I've been talking forever. And right now we're heading to like the 5th question, and we've been flying through this, is how I feel now. So, if you could adopt any book into a film or TV series, what would it be and why? I want a modern adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo in a series of however many episodes is necessary to get every single detail right. But at the same time, I feel like they'd mess it up. It could definitely not be a movie. It's a way too intricate story to ever make just a single movie, unless you plan on making it several hours long. So I feel like a series would be the most appropriate adaptation. It would make it possible to follow through all of the different stories, all of the different characters that we get to meet if we had it, like if you made it into a series. I don't think it'd be able to be like a limited 4-episode series either. It'd probably have to be a long one. I don't know, I would like to see it done if it were done really, really well. But like, I don't trust them to do it really, really well. So, I don't actually know how I feel about that. I feel like most of the stories that I've read and would like to see be made into a TV or TV show or movie have already been adapted or are in the process of being adapted. Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, for example, they're all getting adaptations if they don't have one already, which I have really enjoyed the ones that we've gotten, and I'm looking forward to the ones that we haven't gotten yet. David Suchet is Poirot, and I've enjoyed all of the Poirot movies so much. That's been done to perfection. The Lord of the Rings have probably the best adaptations any book has ever seen. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab could be an interesting adaptation. I think they could do it in a movie, if not, then a limited series of just a few episodes. It could be interesting to see Addie go through decades upon decades, eventually centuries of history, see the world change around her. I think that could be really well done. It could be interesting to follow her character development. They have a lot of potential to show her grow. I also think that they could manage to make this really, really emotional also on screen. I'd actually be really intrigued to see how they would adapt this. This could go really well or terribly wrong, I think. There are a lot of elements that could work really well on the screen. I remember when I was reading All the Light We Cannot See, I could not imagine the adaptation because there's barely any dialogue. It's mostly emotion and reflection and reactions, but also internal reactions to things going on around them. And so I was constantly like, when I was reading this book, I was like, how are they going to make this into a series? Like, how are they going to do that? And they ended up doing it in a way that worked for the story. It's not a perfect adaptation, but I think they did it well. I can totally see this being made into a movie or a series with just a few episodes. I don't know. I feel like they could do a really good job of putting this on screen if the right writers and producers are behind it. So this one, I think I would probably be really excited if they announced that they were making an adaptation of this. I feel like I've heard that that was like something they were talking about, but I haven't heard anything about it for years. So I'm assuming it's not happening, but it really should actually. I think it could be really good. Let's do one more. What book or 3 do you think should be essential reading for everyone? This is really hard because essential reading, when you think like school-wise, did you not like usually hate whatever was assigned because it was forced on you? I'll pose it like this. What book or books do you think everyone should have in their home and find a time to eventually pick up, whether you're a reader or not? I think the question saying what book or 3 do you think should be essential reading is actually really appropriate, because I think I'm going to say The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Listen, I think everyone can enjoy something just a little bit fantastical. These look like a lot, but half of this is like an index and there's a bunch of introductions and maps and stuff, so it's really not nearly as big as it looks. It's a story that everyone knows, whether they've seen the movies or not, whether they've read the books or not, whether they're particularly familiar with Tolkien or not. Everyone knows The Lord of the Rings, everyone's heard of it, everyone knows the basic premise. Tolkien is also one of those authors that has had a massive influence on his own genre and on literature in general. We have a lot to thank Tolkien for in today's literature. Also, I think everyone could use some escapism, being transported into an entirely different world, and even so, recognize quite a few things that go on. Tolkien obviously incorporated a lot of his own real world experiences, his own life experiences when he was writing these books. And particularly those of us who are also interested in history can recognize elements of that in the books. But even so, I think there's a lot that is still relevant and will forever be relevant today to be found in these books. So whether you could use some form of escapism from today's world, or whether you enjoy reading books that also reflect the real world, I think you could find these suit the bill to some extent, to some degree. So considering its place in popular culture, considering its influence on literature, considering the themes and topics we find within the story, considering the way he writes, he incorporates all kinds of cultural elements in here. There's song and history, whole languages. I mean, you can find so many interesting things just to dissect and like get into within this world. So genuinely, I think that this should probably be, if not essential reading for everyone, then it should sit on your shelf in your house, and hopefully you'll find the time to get to it at some point. So The Lord of the Rings is my answer to this final question. Those were all the questions that I'm going to include in this video. If you have thoughts and or opinions on the things that I've mentioned, if you have answers to the questions yourselves and you want to share those, then feel free to do so in the comments below. I will also link Goodreads Twitter/X account in the description for you to find if you also want to check out other people's answers there or want to give your own. We've gone through quite a few of the questions that I've written out. There aren't that many left. I have enough for another video if that's something you guys would be interested in. And if you guys have questions that you would like to hear other readers' thoughts and opinions and answers on or to, then leave those too in the comments and I can include them in the box for a future video if you would like. So that's all from me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you guys in the comments as always. I hope you have a great week, and I hope that the book you're reading is a really, really good one. Bye!